Hello and welcome to the award-winning MVP, the Master's Voice podcast series from Mediabrief.com. I'm your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and with me today is my friend and industry veteran, Paritosh Joshi, Principal at Provocateur Advisory. Paritosh, welcome to the episode.
Good evening, Pavan. Good to see you, as always.
Lovely that you're on the show, Paritosh. But give me a minute or so while I quickly tell my listeners about you. So, Paritosh Joshi, Principal at Provocateur Advisory, has over 3 decades worth of experience in South Asia's rapidly developing consumer product and services markets. Paritosh says his greatest strength is the sheer diversity of categories, organizational environments, and business cycle stages that he has seen and dealt with over this period. Paritosh has been long convinced that some of the best problem solving in business situations happens when learnings from utterly different environments are brought to bear upon an issue. This is where the pool of anecdotes that he has built becomes invaluable. Across his 3-decade career, Paritosh has shown in consumer product and service sales and marketing, business negotiations, team leadership and motivation, goal setting and budgeting, vision articulation, and more. His LinkedIn profile says 30 years of experience, and I saw a listing of some 20 plus jobs listed there. So, rich and varied. The man who brings valuable experience across media, entertainment, business strategy, and so much more. Never, ever minces his words, is bold and provocative in his thinking and expression, ergo provocateur. Well, what's also important is that as a leader who has been helping empower industry bodies like ASCI and the Media Research Users Council, MRUC, and as someone who's been president and head of sales and distribution at India's top network, the Star Network, Paritosh brings enormous knowledge and insights from his wonderfully rich, vast, and proven experience to this discussion today. So that, my friends, is my friend, Paritosh Joshi. So Paritosh, welcome once again to this episode of MVP, the Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com, in which we'll speak about the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, or Trai, and its NTO2, plus the paper Trai brought out recently calling for inputs, comments from concerned stakeholders and the public. So Paritosh, let me first congratulate Trai on completing 25 years. See, I don't think Trai has done anything of note for the broadcast sector, but it has completed 25 years in India doing I don't know what, even though it has, in my view, remained interfering in and demonstrably uncaring of the broadcasters, their subsector and industry, while favoring the distributors' fraternity in an apparently partisan manner. What's your overall assessment of how Trai has operated as a regulator, Paritosh?
I'm actually kind of perplexed by the notion that a regulatory body needs to celebrate an anniversary of any decision.
Sorry.
It's instructive that after more than 2 decades of being the accidental broadcast regulator, the only place where you find the name broadcast in the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India's official presence is if you were to dig down into their website, right? They have chosen to not include broadcast in their name. There are other entities which have chosen to sort of embrace new things as their roles change. But TRAI has never become the TBRAI. It's still the TRAI, which almost by that mere fact candidly acknowledges that this is some kind of a stepney or some kind of a carriage that they were, sort of shanghaied into carrying along, but they were not really designed for it, and they are still not actually able to do it in any sensible way.
Yeah. So Paritosh, how did the TRAI land up in this position in the first place? I think it'll be useful if I quickly share a view on what their history is. Or Paritosh, why don't you share that with us?
Back in 2003, the then Multi-System Operators Association, the MSO Alliance, decided to actually go to court in the Delhi High Court because they believed that the broadcasters at that point in time were consciously or unconsciously subverting the first attempt that we had to do conditional access in India. So CAS was sought to be done in the very early years of this century, and CAS was a non-starter, and for a variety of good reasons. But the MSO Alliance actually believed that it was because broadcasters, for whatever reason, wanted to sabotage conditional access in the first place. Quite frankly, India was nowhere close to ready for it at that point in time. Our footprint was small. Digitization of that tiny footprint would have made no economic sense. So we took our time, and then eventually we got there, and we got there with DAS, which came more than a decade later. And even DAS took the best part of 7-8 years before it rolled out into every part of the country. So they landed up in the job because the Delhi High Court could not find anybody at hand who could be tasked with ensuring and overseeing that CAS was being rolled out. So here's the interesting thing. The very first job that the TRAI was tasked with by a judicial authority, the Delhi High Court, they failed in spectacularly. CAS never happened. CAS was stillborn. That was why TRAI was given the job, and TRAI promptly failed at that job. We should have learned from that. That experience should have told us that this is what happens when you give a regulator who is not really designed for the purpose.
Absolutely.
A regulator who is designed for working on a commodity style of product, not a highly differentiated style of product, which is what broadcasting is all about, with something which is utterly alien to their, shall we say, vocabulary, right? Their regulatory vocabulary, they have always tried at various points in time to force fit the telecom regulatory vocabulary onto broadcasting
sector. Yeah.
They failed in that. Okay, that was the first thing. That's the first thing which happened. After that, now 2 decades have gone by, and the very early parts of those 2 decades, we had Mr. Pradeep Baijal in the chair of TRAI. Mr. Pradeep Baijal was candid in saying that what we really needed to protect the interests of the consumer, and please listen to this word, very important, it's the consumer who matters.
Right.
It's the upabhokta. It's the final person who actually watches TV at home. And in Mr. Baijal's assessment, no regulation of any intrusive sort would be needed once the consumer's interests were protected. And how would those be protected? Once the last mile was competitive, right? At the time when TRAI took charge, the last mile was monopolized by a cable operator who worked with maybe one or other MSOs. But the moment that monopoly broke, which was with the arrival of DTH, Mr. Baijal said that all we need is a second player in the DTH market, and at that point in time, we will start practicing forbearance. Right? This is still available on the TRAI website. You can still go and find that consultation paper on the TRAI website. Right? I thought that was a brilliant thing. I was already in the broadcast sector by that time, so we used to meet Mr. Baijal, and this particular pronouncement gave a lot of sense of confidence and relief that these guys actually know their job. Of course, these notions were belied very quickly thereafter, because soon after that they started regulating prices of the second package which broadcasters began to offer. By around 2006, broadcasters like Star, broadcasters like Z already had such large bouquets that you could not bundle everything into one bouquet. So they started offering a second bouquet because they knew that the first bouquet had big flagship channels and the second bouquet had smaller, more focused, more niche kind of offerings. And they wouldn't go to as many consumers as the flagship platform would go to. And immediately from that point onwards, this intrusiveness of attempting to regulate not what the consumer was spending, but the intermediate pricing between the broadcaster and the distributor, the distribution platforms, began at that stage. So we are talking about 2005 now. Right?
Yep.
And from that point onwards, effectively, the TRAI put its hands up and said, we don't know how to protect the interests of the consumer, so we think we'll be able to manage them by managing the transfer price from the broadcaster to the distributor so that the distributor will price it fairly to the consumer. Now, this is naive thinking, right? And this naivete, and progressively it's no longer naivety, it is power grab, because it put them in a position of enormous authority, second only to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which issues licenses to broadcasters, and arguably more than the MIB, because the TRAI's engagement with the broadcasters is continuous, whereas the MIB's engagement is only, it's momentary, And it's episodic in the sense that you need the license. Once you have the license, unless you do something gratuitously wrong, you continue to broadcast. Whereas the TRAI is overseeing what you're doing with your distribution on a daily basis, right? So in terms of the power that the TRAI wields over the broadcasters, on an operational level, it's a much, much potent source of power than the MIB has. So the MIB issues a license, then steps back, and that's when the TRAI takes over. And I've seen what has happened over the years. What was promised to be forbearance has become more and more and more onerous. Compliance has become essentially impossible. The micromanagement of trying to say this channel, this much price, flagship channel, so much price, this % of price available to be ascribed to this channel, this much on a la carte, this much in package. It's impossible for anybody to even make sense of triangulating the different bits and bobs. You've reached a point where compliance with one thing may very well result in non-compliance with something different. Because they have tangled themselves. What is that old English poem? Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. And we are in this tangled web.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, if I were to tell you that, okay, the INB minister, even the Prime Minister and his entire cabinet is listening to you, Paritosh, what is your 30-second assessment, your summary, the report card that you have to give about Trai to that body of people?
With folded hands, I will tell them, please read what Mr. Baijal said and please start practicing forbearance. Because there is no other reasonable way of allowing what should actually be a vibrant and rapidly growing sector to reach its full potential. That's all I'd say to them. Please practice forbearance.
And on that count and so many others that you just listed out, Paritosh, Trai has failed miserably. That is my summary of what I get from what you've said, and it's my belief also, and it's my considered and informed belief. So, there's one more thing, since we are on the subject of Trai completing 25 years, like you said, doing what we don't know. But Paritosh, did you notice that, the Prime Minister did not mention broadcasters even once in his entire address during the function to celebrate Trai Silver Jubilee? And in the end, giving important guidance to Trai, the Prime Minister said, and I translate verbatim, he said, you have to not only protect the telecom consumers of India, but also promote growth in the world's most attractive telecom market. It was all about telecom only, not a single reference to broadcasting. What does that tell you?
Well, for one thing, it means to say that whoever wrote the briefing notes was cautious and careful enough to recognize that had he mentioned broadcasting in that, it would have been a source of so much soreness among so many of the people from the industry, because they would have turned around and said that the Prime Minister ought to know better than mention the sector which has been treated so cruelly. So perhaps he was showing great wisdom in leaving that thing out of that conversation. I thought, it would be considered political savvy not to rake up issues which are inconvenient and uncomfortable. So, I would applaud him for being very sensible.
And in fact, I don't think today, even the stakeholders that Trai has always very rabidly favored the distribution platforms, even they are now miffed with all the kind of, this muckraking at the bottom of the barrel that NTO2 has actually caused for everybody. Starting with the broadcaster, going on to the distributor, and then to the poor consumer who's suffering today. I used to get 500 channels at home, paying about 350 or 400 or even 500 rupees earlier to a Tata Sky because it was HD DVR and all, and I loved the service. But today, for that same amount, I won't get more than 35, 40 channels.
Absolutely.
Anyways, so Paritosh, that was Trai's failure. It was a real poor metal anniversary, not silver. And now they think they are going towards gold. They might be thinking of a 25-year career again in front, from silver to gold. But I don't think the industry, the broadcasting industry, as in linear broadcasting, has more than 15 to 20 years in India or anywhere in the world, basically. But Paritosh, the entire space is getting converged. Prime Minister was suggesting that, what Trai and the other regulators need to do is to come together and create a converged kind of regulation in a day and age when all media and sectors are converging. Because technology is interconnecting different sectors, all regulators from multiple sectors, the Prime Minister said, must come together and create a common platform, which I understand is a converged kind of regulation. So what's your view, Paritosh? Should the regulation of broadcast be taken away from Trai so that the sector, which to my mind, as I just said, is only about 15 to 20 years of a lifespan, it can finally flourish at least once to its greatest potential, once it is free from the oppressively restrictive, mindless, foolish Trai regulations?
It should be table stakes for any regulator to have an extremely intimate understanding and comprehension of the sector that it regulates. So if you were to look at the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, first of all, look at the way that they've inserted the word development into that particular regulator's name. That regulator actually took the people who presided over IRDA through its first decade and longer, are people who were, well honed in the skills of both life and general insurance before they took on the task of being regulators. Typically, the bankers who managed, shall we say, the core of what the Reserve Bank does are top-class central bankers with enormously solid training in monetary policy, extremely sound understanding of fiscal policy, very sound understanding of interest rates, of currency markets. They have actually had exposure to commercial banking and not just regulatory banking, right? So the people who work in the key regulatory bodies, SEBI has people who are, deeply entrenched in equity markets and, financial markets. Before they qualified to be people at SEBI, before they are in the sector regulator. So it is sort of table stakes to know the business before you run it, or before you try to oversee it, and before you try to regulate it.
Correct.
Now, to my mind, one of the things which has often been a part of the conversation but never reached any fruition, except in the sense of content regulation, where we now do self-regulation, right? Thanks to the initiatives taken by what we now call the IBDF, it used to be called the IBF, and the NBDA, which used to be called the NBA, we now have self-regulation on content, both for news as well as other content, right? Now, it has always been a part of the conversation that in much the same way as you do content regulation, you should do distribution regulation, carriage regulation also through a substantially self-regulatory system. Let me give you an example. The Office of Communications in the United Kingdom is an autonomous body, right? It reports actually to the British Parliament. It does not report to the executive arm of the government. It reports to the legislature, right? Now, because of the nature of funding that the TRAI receives, the TRAI just becomes yet another arm, a ministry arm, a regular arm of the Indian executive, right? What the broadcasters have often offered, and it has been in conversation for as long as I have been involved with this industry, is give us the opportunity to work sideways across the entire value chain, from people who finally deliver the signal at home, the local cable operator, going all the way up to, people who do the distribution platforms, people who do the trunk carriage services, people who do the uplinks, the satellite players, all of them. Let them all come together, let them offer their best minds, and let's do this through the self-regulatory way, right? Let the industry be treated as a bunch of grown-ups instead of a bunch of truant children who need to be school-bound all the time, right? Now, it seems as if this has never gathered any momentum, and for which I must say, I would also hold participants in this entire value chain responsible. If you have individual conversations, serious people who are in the DSO business, serious people who run large cable networks, serious people who do satellites, serious people who are in broadcasting, will all tell you in personal conversation that maybe we need to work with the other guys with whom we interact, right? We can sort this out ourselves. We should sort it out ourselves. This is us. We should solve, and we should solve problems for the consumer.
Exactly.
We want to ensure that the consumer gets the best possible deal.
Right.
And the best way of making it happen is for us. I also am now no longer of a view that leave everything completely to market forces and the market will look after itself. The reality is, when people have an opportunity to extort, they do extort.
They do, yes.
So do you need regulation? Yes, you do.
Right.
But, I serve in the Advertising Standards Council. Will people do mischief with their advertising messaging? Yes, they will. But hey, we can have a self-regulatory system which calls them to account, which holds them responsible. It's a jury of peers. It's hard to say no to a jury of peers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it that has completely evaporated from our conversation? Why should we always have to think that, we live in a nanny state and the nanny must look after us? Why can't we look after ourselves? Aren't we grown up enough?
Right. So, should Trai then be told no more broadcast regulation for you?
To the contrary, TRAI has a task of doing a sensible handing over. What the TRAI should do, and it's the hardest thing to do, is appoint its own successor. Right? I was taught by a boss in my very early years of my life that the best thing you can do as a supervisor is to make yourself redundant.
Absolutely. Which boss?
His full name is Kruttiventi Anand Prasad. And K. Anand Prasad once told me that my job is to make my job irrelevant.
Wonderful. Right. So let's continue. What were you saying?
So the TRAI can, giving the authority that it has, that everybody has to, look at them with trepidation, let the TRAI become the crucible in which we finally start learning to not just coexist, which we have done in an uncomfortable way with all the other participants in the play, but actively saying we can co-opt each other and collaborate with each other to ensure that everybody gets a fair deal, and most crucially, that the consumer gets a fair deal. And let us set up the mechanisms under initially the aegis of the good offices of the TRAI. So I'm not being dismissive. I'm saying, listen, you have the muscle today, right? You've got the muscle because you got the muscle from the court, and then after that you built the muscle. All right? Now use this to facilitate, to, become the catalyst for doing the next generation of regulation. And the next generation of regulation should learn to treat the participants in this value chain as grown-ups, and then task them with being adult in their behavior with each other, right? Let the value chain take charge. Let the TRAI be the honest mediator, the honest intermediary who does not take sides across the entire value chain, and let it work. Provide its forum, provide its platform to create that next generation of structure. I'm absolutely certain that, there was a time, if I may take another example, when periodically various government authorities would say, we will do our own measurement system because we can't trust the industry to do it. But guess what? The industry of contending forces, the agencies, the clients and the broadcasters finally made their peace, co-opted each other and built BARC. Now, you might have differences of opinion about BARC, but the fact of the matter is that BARC has served its purpose.
Absolutely.
There are glitches periodically, but those glitches are being solved. People are addressing themselves to them. And BARC is also beginning to say, hey, there is a future. Like you said, maybe linear broadcasting is not the be-all and end-all of where we are going to be in times to come. But BARC needs to be future ready for that, right? Everybody who deals with this communication business has to be constantly future ready for a future which is constantly changing.
Right.
For which we need to say that let's get the best minds from everywhere, right? The blind man and the elephant sort of keeps coming to mind in so many situations when you think about India. One blind man cannot tell you what the elephant looks like, but if the 6 blind men put their ideas together, well, you do actually get a terrific description of the elephant anyway. Let's show some trust, man.
Trust, yes, but trust in what? Your entire, your vision and your solution in your mind is so utopian, particularly when you consider that this is a body that has blundered, was first kicked upstairs when it was born, judicially.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
To try and give birth to caste, but it actually killed the whole thing, delivered a stillborn baby.
Yes.
Now, that is Trai for you, right? For the last 25 years, they haven't got their act together. Every time they come with something blundering, and then there's another consultation paper comes out. So what do you think, Paritosh, of Trai's NTO2 and this latest consultation paper it has floated? Give us the summary and even the idiot's guide for even the youngest professional in this.
Well, actually, the thing with the NTOs, first of all, you call it new tariff order. You've had 20 tariff orders. Which one are we talking about now? Just by saying it's a new tariff order doesn't change the fact that it is the nth tariff order, right?
Yep.
And by calling it new, you're not fundamentally changing anything. You're just saying that I've got one more set of new crazy ideas which somebody cooked up sitting in that office near Ramlila Maidan in Delhi. And now we are going to, sort of basically ramrod them down your throats, right? If I may say this very candidly, I actually tire of the idea that it is worth commenting on the substance of a particular tariff order. When I'm fundamentally, implacably opposed to the very notion of the tariff order, another tariff order which creates a whole new set of configurations saying this much for this flagship, this much for this major channel, this percent for that, this percent for the other, this is how you will bundle, this is how you will offer a la carte. You know what? You're stirring a toxic pot. It doesn't make any difference. The toxin inside is the same. Until you drain it and you say, let's start this all over again. Now, to your previous point, can they be trusted with doing anything new? You know what? I really, really do believe that the possibilities of redemption exist for everybody.
Even Trai?
All the religious thinkers, every religious thinker of every religion has told you that even the worst sinner can be redeemed, right? And their redemption may very well lie in saying, we will now birth our successor. And our successor will be run self-regulatorily. At best, there will be a secondary or tertiary oversight, which we may choose to retain with ourselves. But the business is grown up, the participants are grown up, that fragmentation has diminished, there is a lot of consolidation.
Wisdom also.
All across the value chain. And people now know more, they have understood more, they understand what the consumer is looking for. Let's now show that we have the ability to redeem ourselves by being the parent, by being the catalyst for this new self-regulatory sort of stage where we will accept that these people are grown up, right? Like the FCC accepts that, these people are grown up, or the OfCom accepts that these people are grown up. Just learn to accept that we have grown up, that we are not childish, we are not silly, we will not do irresponsible things. And for goodness sake, the TRAI does not have any economic exposure to the consumer. Every participant in the value chain does.
Right.
It's in the interest of every participant in the value chain to ensure that the consumer remains in this marketplace. It's in our interest in the value chain to ensure that consumers do not flee to alternatives, right? That the consumers don't jettison us because they are, like you just said, that you tire of buying, these channels because they are just now outrageously expensive. It is like what you wanted to prevent, you have actively, you've fostered an extortionate final distribution pipe, and you're now extorting from consumers. I mean, how does that make any sense whatsoever?
So Paritosh, how well can any regulator regulate a sector or subsector unless there is strong and accurate data? At the Trai Silver Jubilee, my God, I keep coming back to that dreaded day when it was born and then celebrated 25 years thereafter. Okay, the chairman had said that there are 1 lakh local cable operators or LCOs in the country. And the secretary said there are 80,000 LCOs. That's a 20% variation, for God's sake. What kind of data do you have? How does a body that's been around for 25 years, even if you go by a damn guesstimate, and why a guesstimate? Whenever there is an LCO, he goes to the post office, he registers. Why doesn't that data go into the database in the center somewhere? There is nothing that is streamlined. The data is not there. And then as soon as an LCO registers, all he has to do is just to apply at the local post office, pay $500. And once he or she gets the license, two things happen. The post office doesn't share the data with any central repository of Trai, and the partisan nature of Trai's regulation kicks in. Any LCO with a license is covered by an ironclad must provide clause that applies to any broadcaster or MSO she or he approaches for services. And even if the LCO is a criminal or a known defaulter who's just changed the business name, he has to start or she has to start receiving the signals. What kind of nonsense is this system, which Trai A doesn't have numbers about and has been foisting down the throats of broadcasters and even the MSOs through the LCOs who can just come up paying $500 and doing what they want.
The reality of this is that progressively these little guys whom you are talking about have actually, while it is easy to go and get a license in the post office, they're not meaningful anymore. So, when you say that there are 100,000 or 80,000 or any X thousands of people, the final reality on the ground is most of them are economically unviable. Most of them are looking for an exit, and the moment they find a reasonable economic exit, by the way, even the smallest cable operator now understands the notion of enterprise value. And the moment he or she gets something that they find as an attractive valuation, they'll exit. They'll just happily surrender and go away.
But thank God for Next Digital. Today, an LCO can become an MSO.
Dish at the top.
Hidden in the sky in Hindujas. Yeah. Next Digital is amazing. I mean, for 14-15 lakhs, you have your own. You don't need the digital head end of the MSO. They can do it.
Because there is a shared head end. Yeah, of course they can do it. But the thing is this, that, you're right. It can be done. But the notion that it is as simple as just giving an undifferentiated bundle which you can deliver into the consumer's home is actually a complete incomprehension of what broadcast services are meant to be, right? If you see the quality, I remember, not today, I remember 15 years ago watching StarHub in Singapore and saying, this is what the future of Indian broadcasting distribution services should look like. Even today, we are not even a pale shadow of what StarHub was delivering in 2008. 14 years after what StarHub was doing then, we haven't even got close to it, right? So, the notion that all it takes is a head end.
No. Hang on. Ultimately, it is the failure of Trai yet again.
Yeah, absolutely.
To not have been able to come out with not just regulatory but interesting building, growth and development kind of regulation that would help everybody come together and pull in the same direction. And if you look at the Next Digital head end in the sky thing, what happens is they allow even the lowest tier of 300 channels from a cable operator, they have 8 channels where they can put their own content, and these are small people in the back of beyond, right? So you will not get absolutely the best in digital class back end where they can post-produce and put their stuff out. But the pipeline of platform of content delivery is there, alive, kicking, and it is of a quality which has no problem. There is no rain problems. There are nothing of the sort that, DTH dies the moment there is rain.
Yeah.
Right. So that is fine. But I'm saying that Trai did not actually help the entire ecosystem here.
And it still isn't doing it.
Exactly.
Today, what is happening? You mentioned convergence. You mentioned the fact that the Prime Minister talked about convergence. Now, when you go to international markets, when you go to the West, if you were to be looking at Sky, for example, in the UK, today you can switch from the linear service to the on-demand service without ever knowing that you did that, right? The two services are converging at one device, and in the UK now you've lost the set-top box because the set-top box has become a digital tuner in the TV, right? So it's embedded in the TV. You don't have to actually have a separate set-top box anymore, right? Now, the TRAI I mentioned, by the way, not now, 10-12 years ago, TRAI said there needs to be interoperability of set-top boxes.
Right.
Everything that they have ever asked for has never happened. Everything, right? Because what they do is so, at the time when they ask for it, it is so preposterous that it can't happen. So, it's a litany of failures. And I think there has to come a time when you say, ki boss, enough already. How many D's must a guy get before his CGPI is so low that he's not allowed to be in the class? But, honestly, I think wise heads would prevail at some point in time and say that, listen, we're not cut out for this. Somebody shoved it down our throats once upon a time, right? We tried manfully to do as much as we could with it. We will now acknowledge that all that we can do is find those people who can actually do it, which is you, right? You guys. So come on in here. Let's make you sit down together. Let's get you comfortable. And let me answer your point about data, right? Now, what you really need is you need high quality industry research for this, right? Just like we do readership research through an IRS, just like we do viewership research through a bar, you need to do platform research, right? You need to have an industry standard which perhaps, under the aegis of the TRAI itself, saying let's co-fund it. Let all the industry bodies participate in this. Let's actually get the data of what the ground really looks like. Right?
Yeah.
It's in shared interest to understand what the ground really looks like.
And nothing like that has been done so far.
Ever.
That's what I'm saying.
Nothing has been done ever, right? So this is kind of infrastructural research. It's like knowing how many homes are connected to electricity. It's like knowing how many homes have got running water, how many homes have sewage services, right? In much the same way, since this is an infrastructural basic service that every consumer should be entitled to and should have access to, it is imperative that we actually know, like a census of what that ground looks like. And I can bet that all you need to do is send the hat around and you'll find the money. This is not an expensive project. 20 crores?
Yeah.
Not much more than that. How much time should it take for 100,000 crore industry to find 20 crores? Send the hat around in the room. You'll get the money in no time at all.
Absolutely.
Commission research from reliable bodies, right? And start looking at hard data. Share that data. Make it widely available. Invite academics. Not just domestic. Invite academics from around the world. There's a lot of expertise which lies all over the world in what happens with broadcast services, what happens with entertainment services, right? Let's get the best minds on the job. And with this kind of hothouse of data available, everybody who is anybody will want to play a role and weigh in and, want to analyze and say, hey, listen, this is what we can understand. That's what you do when you take the data and open source it and say, okay, if you have the legitimate cred to access this data, we'll give you access. Show us what it can tell you, right? Get many, many, many views. Get a plurality of views and contexts to look at the data and analyze it from all these, innumerable ways of looking at it, because there's so much insight there. You know what? I have believed for the longest time that, when you look at, you talk about leading and lagging indicators of economic development in an economy, entertainment services and consumption of entertainment services is a true leading indicator of what's happening underneath, right? The attitude of the consumer towards spending money on entertainment is a really good mirror of understanding what the consumer sees as her future, right? Are you buoyant about your future or are you despondent about your future, right? It's a leading indicator. We've never looked at it like that, but this is genuinely a leading indicator that you're talking about. So it has real economic value, right? It's not trivial. It's not trivial how much leisure time you have. It's not trivial what you do with that leisure time. It's not trivial how much money you're willing to spend on a cinema ticket, and it's not trivial how much money you're willing to spend on watching television, right? Right now, this afternoon, I purchased a film from Google Play for 390 rupees. I was willing to pay that because I knew that I would have to wait forever before that film ever showed up on a television network in India. Why will it not show up on a television network in India? There's no economic value in it. Should not a niche broadcaster offer me that film? If it was CVO, if it was HBO, they would have. We don't have anything like that kind of a monetizing model for a small niche broadcaster. Small niche broadcasters in India are saying, forget it, I'm giving this up and handing it all over to the OTT players.
Right.
The entire notion that we need to have the long tail and we need to have channels which cater to the long tail has been voluntarily abandoned by broadcasters because they are saying there is no money in it. I would much rather place this on an OTT and make good money out of it, right? That film, if it had been placed on a broadcast platform, would have earned them maybe 2 rupees per home from 2 million homes. Now it will get them 390 rupees per home from 200,000 homes.
Right, Paritosh. Very, very interesting point that now. Let's look at the consultation paper on NTO2 of Trai. Let me pick some important points from there, present them to you for your inputs and points you would like to share with Trai as your inputs through this podcast episode. So, Some key issues or areas. One, should Trai continue to prescribe a ceiling price of a channel for inclusion in a bouquet? If yes, it's asked you to suggest the MRP of a television channel, and if no, what strategy should be adopted to ensure the transparency of prices for a consumer?
As soon as somebody decides that this is the peak price that you can charge for a bar of soap, that will be also the day on which you can decide that this is the peak price to charge for a channel. That's what I think of this proposition. The day that you decide that the maximum you can charge for a bag of detergent, that this is the most that you can charge for a bottle of shampoo, alright, that's the day we'll start figuring out how much you charge for a channel.
I will paraphrase that as absolutely irrelevant and stupid.
Preposterous.
Preposterous. Absolutely preposterous. I mean, how do you impinge upon the freedom to do business of any
I'll tell you
entity?
exactly why not. The reason why a shampoo from a fancy all-natural brand is much more expensive than a shampoo which is like at the low end is not that the detergent is different, the detergent is the same, but the ingredients that the high-end shampoo is using are expensive ingredients, right? And if they want to say that I want to offer a premium product for consumers who wish to have those exclusive sort of components in their hair care routine, I have to spend the money. I want to create content which is not cheap to create. I want to create content which is, it's going to take some money to invest. And are you going to say that there is no economic model? That's what it says. That's what it effectively says. The simple truth of it is that you need horses for courses. You need products which cater to different consumer segments uniquely to their unique requirements. The way that any market grows is by progressive refinement, by progressive, more tight targeting and more precise definitions of what the benefit will be. Right? Now, for that to happen, you need to ensure that everybody has an economic model that they can work with. Even a small channel catering only to Nagaland should be able to make fair money for what it does.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Now, you cannot impose the logic of an Uttar Pradesh channel on a channel which caters to Nagaland, a channel which caters to the Kodagu population of Coorg. Do you or do you not want a channel which caters to the Tulu-speaking people of coastal Karnataka? I would argue you do want. Do you not want different products to cater to the different parts of Maharashtra? Vidarbha is a different part of Maharashtra. Khandesh is a different part of Maharashtra. Konkan is a different part of Maharashtra. Their requirements are different. They require news channels.
Exactly.
All their own, just like they have their newspapers. Do you want to have economic models which will work for them? The only way you can do it is by setting the market free. Now, how do you prevent extortion? Like I said, it's in the self-interest of the value chain to ensure that nobody extorts, that ultimately the consumer gets a good deal, right? So, make us responsible. Make those who are in the industry responsible. And then keep legislative oversight. Let them answer to the Parliament of India. Let them answer to the Lok Sabha. Let such a regulator answer questions like the OfCom does to the House of Commons, right? This is authority without responsibility. What TRAI has is an extraordinary case.
And it has failed and floundered every time. So the next point, Paritosh, of Trai's consultation is what steps should be taken to ensure that proper television channels remain accessible to the large segment of viewers? Should there be a ceiling on the MRP of paid channels? I mean, what's with these guys?
Yeah, there is a simple solution. Get out of the way. And the good news is that through the platform that you've created through Mediabrief, I think we have an honest commentator on the state of play, right? We need somebody who has the fearlessness of, sort of journalistic courage to say that we tell you like we see it, we get all the points of view and we bring them to you.
Correct.
That's what you do.
Absolutely.
That's what you do well. And it's therefore you've chosen this task. It's not an attractive task. You are going to bring opprobrium upon yourself by the mere fact of doing this.
Of course.
Right? So the fact that you're doing it is, to me, courageous journalism, and I applaud that. Right? But therefore, I'm going to use your forum to say very politely, like I said, with folded hands.
Go ahead.
Boss, thank you for your services, yeah? Thank you for services. Now, please find a successor, right? आपका रिटायरमेंट आ गया, आपको हम अच्छी सी पार्टी देंगे, हम सब जश्न मनाएंगे, जोरदार जश्न मनाएंगे, हाँ, 4 शहरों में जाके मनाएंगे, चलिए। लेकिन उसके बाद में आप सेवा निवृत्त हो जाइए और किसी और को जो इसके काबिल है उसको यहाँ पे अपने जगह पे लेके आए,
उसे ट्राई करने दीजिए, ट्राई साहब।
That's a good one.
It's really not a laughing matter, Paritosh. And I'm also definitely going to the OHD whenever it comes out. And I hope to see you there too, Paritosh. And, let's talk to everybody out there and say, look, it's high time that we stop this mauling of the broadcast and now even the distribution and through them, because of all the nonsense that's happening, of the consumers' interests, right?
That's the only thing that should matter.
Absolutely.
That's the only thing that should matter.
Okay, one more thing. Should there be a ceiling on the discount on some of a la carte prices of channels forming part of bouquets? Like, should there be a ceiling on the discount, on how much discount you can charge on the sum of prices of channels forming parts of bouquets while fixing MRPs of bouquets by broadcasters? That's what Trai wants to know. And if it's asked that, if so, what should be the appropriate methodology to work out the permissible ceiling on discount? Permissible ceiling on discount? I mean, can you... I just shake my head at the audacity of this suggestion or even the thought entering their minds. And then they say, what should be the value of such ceiling?
Will they also impose a cap on the shoe size of people who work in the industry? Will they also impose a limit on the engine capacity of the internal combustion engine that you can get to drive if you work in this industry? I mean, the thing is this, that somewhere along the line it starts by being earnest, then it turns ludicrous, then all that you can do is look at it from a distance and say, all right, maybe they have completely lost it, maybe they need help. That's what you say, right, these days?
Yeah, it's just Trai being Trai, frankly, after all these years.
Can they stop trying?
Good Lord, the puns will also get as bad as them soon. This was a good one.
Such is life.
Another thing Trai has asked is, you have to think of new words and ways of responding, Paritosh. But it said, should channel prices in bouquets be homogeneous? If yes, what should be an appropriate criteria for ensuring homogeneity in pricing the channels to be the part of the same bouquets? And if no, what measures should be taken to ensure an effective a la carte choice, etc., etc.?
Let's do this. Let's just put, recently there has been a lot of sort of smoke and fire about multiple channel numbers for the same channel, landing pages and, multi-spotting and all that.
Correct.
Let's do it. Let's just solve this problem forever. Let's put Doordarshan on 500 channels. Right? Channel 1, Doordarshan. Channel 2, Doordarshan. Channel 300, Doordarshan. Channel 481, Doordarshan. Channel 499, Doordarshan. Channel 500, Doordarshan. Homogenize the whole lot. Be done with it. Just kill the sector already. Why bother? Instead of a death of the 1,000 cards, it's more humane to say, wait a minute, we are going to kill the industry, but we're going to kill it in one fell swoop. All right? You are gone. You're over. You're finished. Right? That's it.
God. Okay, and just for try to smell the damn coffee, which it doesn't seem to have smelt or gotten a whiff of in the last 25 years, Paritosh, just mention a summary back of the envelope of the size of the sector, the kind of jobs, the amount of contribution it makes, and the value and the size in terms of creative economy, content economy. Just tell Trai that this is what you are out to kill, with both those swords in both your arms like a marauding Moor.
So, what we know empirically, I'm not making this stuff.
Yep.
Empirically, we know that when economies transition from low income to middle income, right, the entertainment sector starts getting into whole digits instead of being fractional part of digits, right? As you grow, you start going to first 1%, 1.5%, to when you're at the size of the United States economy, it's more than 2% of the GDP of the United States of America, right? At the least, we should benchmark ourselves to somebody like Indonesia, where it is already over 1%, right? If this was to be the case in India, and let's say that we are aspiring to be a $5 trillion economy, then if we said that we are going to be 1.5% of that, right? That's a $70.5 billion business. That's how it should be if we were to be a $5 trillion economy. At $3 trillion, scale it down to that, at least 1%.
Yeah.
So at least 30 billion.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, how long are you going to keep suffocating this? How many years longer do you want to keep throttling it? Right? There's an economic opportunity. Every single significant conference which routinely has TRAI representatives, ministry representatives, senior politicians in the room, the talking voices of this industry tell them that, आप लोग जरा ये समझिए कि ये बहुत बड़ा हो सकता है, इसमें लाखों करोड़ों लोगों को इसमें आमदनी मिल सकती है और इसमें से आपके जीडीपी को बहुत लाभ हो सकता है. It's been said. If you read the speeches made to, for example, by Frame's keynote speakers over the last 15 years, they say the same thing over and over and over ad nauseum. None of it makes any difference.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So you hear it and say, yeah, I think I heard this before.
Yeah, true.
So how long are we going to be stuck in this crazy rut? Somewhere along the line. And you're right. I'm not saying that don't protect the interests of the consumer, but I don't think there's anything socialistic about it. I think it's in the self-interest of those people who are content creators to ensure that their content reaches the consumer.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants their content to be so exclusive that nobody will watch it.
Exactly.
I want to watch Satyajit Rai's Ghore Baire. I want to be able to watch an Audrey Hepburn film like My Fair Lady. I want to be able to watch it on a platform over here. I want to be able to watch Diwar when I feel like it. I want to be able to watch Mahal when I feel like it. Can I right now? Does a broadcaster offer me that opportunity? No, they don't. Why not? Because there's no economic model in it.
Absolutely.
About time that you said that, wait, we keep saying we have great stories to tell. Recently, we had a bunch of people going and saying it in Cannes that we have many stories that we can tell. Right, we can tell the stories so long as the people who are involved, and I'm not talking about the big flagship production houses and the big flagship broadcasters. Right? If somebody like you should decide that, a podcast is not all that you want to do, you want to become a filmmaker. You want to make documentaries. You know what? You'll go nuts trying to find the economics for it. Because today, the market does not support it. Why does the market not support it? Because the revenue opportunities, the monetization opportunities don't exist. Because the primary monetization opportunity is through these 400 million homes that you spoke about. And those 400 million will become 500 million and they'll become 600 million. You know why? Because the average family size is shrinking. So instead of having one screen for 5 people or 7 people, which it used to be 20 years ago, that screen became for 4 people. Now the screen is for 2.5 people.
Exactly.
The reason why we are adding screens faster than our population growth is because the average household size is diminishing. This will continue in years to come. But you need to be able to ensure that those who wish to create entertainment, who wish to create information, who wish to create news, have the ability to do so and can be fairly compensated for it.
Absolutely.
You know what? We have been hearing through various governments in the last many years that the burden of compliance should come down. It should be easy to do business, not difficult to do business. Right? It's inconceivable that the TRAI doesn't know this. This is the announced policy of the government of India that we want to make the practice of doing business easy.
Correct.
Right? There is one particular regulator in this country which is bent upon making business difficult.
Absolutely.
By making compliance impossible.
Yeah.
So, TRAI's regulations, if anybody attempted to even understand what is going on and then, try to ensure that every little dot has been dotted and every T has been crossed and every I has been dotted, they'll never be able to do anything. They'll be absolutely catatonic by the time they try to figure out, boss, iska matlab hi kya hai, yaar? So, you are leaving this industry catatonic.
Yeah.
We are now a deer in headlights because there comes a time when you're saying that this alphabet soup which you keep pouring onto us, we don't understand it anymore. We don't know why you're doing it.
And it's just another iteration of a complete, never-ending list of documents that it keeps foisting on us. So Paritosh, thank you very much indeed. I think I really found a lot of insights in your assessment and the anecdotes that you've come out with to illustrate all the thoughts and the points that you had to make about Trai and about the monstrosity, my word, called Trai, which has been suffocating and is hell-bent on choking the damn life out of the broadcasting sector, especially the linear broadcasting sector and the content economy in India. So, as you said, ultimately, and you've always been a proponent of self-regulation and everybody coming together for the interests of all the important stakeholders with the consumers or viewers right at the top. So, I think it's going to be very important that every stakeholder, all the three most important links in this chain of the broadcasters, plus the content creators, the distributors, and ultimately even the viewers should now rise and say, we don't want this regulation that just completely limits my choice as a consumer of the number of channels I can watch,
They are voting with their wallets already, Pavan. The consumer holds the ultimate tool in her hand.
Absolutely.
She can deny you your revenue because she is fed up of the way that the system is functioning. So the consumer is going to vote with her wallet. She's already voting with her wallet. We don't like to use the term cord cutting in this country. It's a little uneasy kind of a term to use. But hey, it's a matter of time. The consumer is going to say that, boss, जब इस पे सब कुछ मिलता है, तो मैं ये करती क्यों?
आप मुझे ये बताओ, Paritosh, there are some top OTT platforms in the US, in Canada, Indian ones, which have actually completely cut off the entire MSO system of terrestrial broadcast, terrestrial distribution. It only goes through their apps. And now they just cut that entire ecosystem out. What is to stop a broadcaster from saying, why do I just not go directly to them, through my app? What happens to the entire ecosystem on the ground?
Like I said, they are voting with their feet and they are voting with their wallets. It's happening now, right? You're not talking about a speculative future here. This is not science fiction.
Not at all, not at all. And cord cutting, yes, it's happening, even though it's happening very slowly, but it is happening for sure. Never mind if there were 500 million OTT apps downloaded in all their lifetimes completely so far, and there might be only 50 to 60 million paying subscribers there. It's a small percentage. There are about 50 to 60 million households or non-television households that still have to become first TV homes. So, there is a lot of scope for both the OTT space and the linear broadcasting space to grow. But for this monster in the middle, which is completely blind and completely illogical, called Trai, I think NTO2 and Trai both need to really be shown the door. That's my considered view on this, Paritosh. Parting assessment, summary of Trai.
They didn't ask for it, right? It was foisted on them. So to that extent, I only have sympathy, right? What happens is that when you are asked to do something which you are not really capable of, you think that if anybody is criticizing you, you need to double down and refuse to go away, right? Because I'm going to try harder. So I'll keep trying harder and harder. But the point is this, that you are misinformed on day 1, on day 7,500, you are still misinformed, right? So it's what Einstein said, right? If you do the same thing, you can't expect a different result. So we have been doing the same thing and hoping that things will turn out differently. Honestly, we should not bear them any grudges. They thought at the time when they were given the job, they thought that they were performing a noble public service, right? All regulators believe about themselves that they are performing a noble public service. Basically, what nobody has been able to tell Trai in as many words is that you're now doing a public disservice.
Right.
And it's about time that you cut our losses. Right?
And get out of our faces.
Please don't do any more disservice. We will thank you for whatever you did until now. We'll be very, very generous in our appreciation of whatever it is that you did. But now, ab to jaan chodo yaar.
This is a very from the heart message to Trai.
Yeah, that's it. There's nothing else to say.
Ab to jaan chodo yaar.
Given a decent burial,
yes,
we'll do the obsequies, we will write the obituaries, there'll be obit references, we'll do all the nice stuff. We are the media, we do this, right? So we'll give you a fond send-off, right? We'll sing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, we'll sing Old Lang Syne in times to come. But it's time for Old Lang Syne.
Absolutely. Right, Paritosh, I actually could vent a lot, and thank you for your views on Trai. You've been far kinder than I have been I've been far more direct and a little more unkind than you have in my expression. But ultimately, I think both of us think the same, though I would never dare to speak for you. Nevertheless, I have loved this conversation, enjoyed all the wonderful insights from so much of experience that you bring. It's been a pleasure talking to you. What did you think of our chat so far?
So Pavan, first of all, it's a heroic effort to do this week on week, to call people, to make interesting conversations happen. So what you're doing with Master's Voice, what you're doing with Mediabrief is indeed extremely laudable work. And I've always said that it's heroic that you're doing it. It's brilliant that it has gathered momentum. It's brilliant that, you're growing your audiences, that more and more people are hearing about these things, because these are frequently abstruse issues, right? These are not issues that are easy to talk about. They're not easy to sort of unpeel or unpack for people. So what you're doing is an incredibly valuable service for the industry. Generally, what tends to happen is industry outlets become hagiographies, right? You have chosen to stay clear of that. You've chosen to stay on the side of the angels on this one. You're doing what needs to get done. You're doing good, honest journalism, and for which, I think all the encomiums that you get are well-deserved. I think the awards that you're winning are an acknowledgement of that fact. And I hope that, when you come to your 156th episode, that you'll still find a little bit of time for me.
There will always be time for you, Paritosh. You're not just a dear friend, but someone I really look up to.
And Pavan, it's always a treat to talk to you.
That was Paritosh Joshi, Principal at Provocateur Advisory, my wonderful friend and amazing guest on this episode of MVP, the Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. I don't know if it was so much of enjoyment as perhaps a lot of resentment that might have sort of been evoked from all the years of this complete meddlesome regulation by Trai of the linear broadcast industry. And I sincerely hope that you will also express yourselves and try and get on to the OHD, the discussion that Trai will definitely put up to discuss the NTO2 and its impact on the basis of the consultation paper. Till we meet again in the next episode of the Master's Voice podcast series on Mediabrief.com, this is your host and friend Pavan Chawla saying, take care, stay safe, bye-bye.